Good morning, everyone. I was doing my devotions this morning and I received this revelation and I wanted to share it with you. So, welcome to Are You Determined to Grow? And so, I was looking at Exodus, the 16th chapter, starting at verse 31 through verse 36 as I'm preparing to move into the next, finishing off chapter 16 of Exodus, getting ready for Sunday school. So, I want to read to you verse 31 through 36. And when I'm done reading, then what I'll do is just give you the revelation that I got, and it's so awesome and profound. I just wanted to share it with you. Okay, verse 31 says, "And the house of Israel called its name manna, and it was like white corundum seed, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey." And then Moses said, "This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Fill an armor with it to be kept for generations, that they may see the bread which I fed you in the wilderness, which I brought you out of the land of Egypt." And Moses said to Aaron, "Take a pot and put an armor of manna in it, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations." And as the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. In the generation of Israel ate manna 40 years, and until they came to an inhabited land, they ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Now, an omer is 1/10 of an ephod. Okay, so revelation. The revelation he gave me. I'm gonna read it because I don't want to miss any parts of what he shared with me. Okay, so he said, manna. Of course, manna is bread from heaven. But he shared with me that it wasn't really the bread that they received. We know bread from heaven, or we know that manna is the bread from heaven, or at least that's the way we've been taught. But really, it's actually the seed. And so, the seed of the bread of heaven, seed is this beginning, and there are still efforts that have to be made to make the seed into bread. The seed is sweet like honey. When God truly blesses you, He adds no sorrow. He makes your life, or the blessing itself, is sweet like honey. Then he says, in the scriptures, he says, make a memorial for generations so that when they come after you, they can see how God brought you out. That's kind of like our testimony. You notice that throughout the Bible, it talks about making a memorial or showing what God has already done for you or how God has already blessed you. In the generations that we have currently, a lot of people don't want to tell about their past or what God actually brought them out. They just want you to see what they are now. And then you still are not sure how God can help you or bring you out. And so it's extremely important that we make a memorial of our lives because God delivered us. God saved us. He brought us out. So let me go on a little further. And this is part of the revelation. So he tells them in the scripture, as you had just heard me read, he says, lay it up before God to keep it for generations. And so God just shared with me, he said, only God has the keeping power to allow the proof of the blessing or the proof of the deliverance to last forever. So when God truly delivers and God blesses you, it can last forever. It's our choice. God has the keeping power. He has the power to keep you for generations to come. He has the power to allow the seed to continue to grow from generation to generation. And so then the next thing he tells me is that for 40 years he fed the manna, heavenly provision, for 40 years. Now, we want to also be mindful that in those 40 years, the children of Israel, the reason why it took them 40 years for a journey that normally takes about 11 days is because they had been rebellious. They had been complaining. that had been doing everything that we do sometimes, even today. Anyway, but he still kept them. He still gave them the opportunity. 40 years, he blessed them with heavenly provision. So right before the blessing runs out, God shared with me, you will inherit the land. And so after the 40 years of going into the wilderness, and they were rebellious. They did all kind of things just like we do. Just like we do right now. But he wanted you to know this morning. He wanted you to know that if you are determined to grow, which is the show that I'm talking about, that if you're determined to grow, that you will, before the blessing runs out, you will inherit the land. You will inherit the promise. You got to stay steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. Now, there are times when we're not going to be 100%. We're going to make mistakes, but God is a forgiving God. He is a God that is willing to wait on you and has waited on us for thousands of years to change our lives, to get it better, to do right. And guess what? Even when we make mistakes, he said that he wouldn't put no more temptation on us than we are able to bear, but he will make a way of escape. That way of escape is Jesus. He'll always give us the opportunity to come back to him, to keep us from generations to generations. So as God continues to give you that heavenly provision, as God continues to make a way out of no way for you, keep in mind, if it's 40 years, if it's 10 days, if it's an hour, it's worth the wait. So keep this in mind as you're finishing off your Sunday school study. I just had to share that with you, that God's provision begins with a seed. And we have to make an effort to take that seed and do what God has called us to do. All right. Are you determined to grow?